It's time to awaken and remember who you really are. It's time to live a life that you absolutely love. And it is time for the awakened being. Conversations to create change. Having real, transparent conversations that will change your world. And together, we can change the world.
Today, my friends, we are diving into sacred portals to your awakening. And this show is really to give you an understanding and context to something I feel like not many people talk about or can talk about. It's so important to me. I'm extremely passionate about it. It's a huge part of what I do ever since years and years ago I became made aware of the divine gifts that these are. And you might have no idea what they really entail, and I really wanted to bring this conversation forth. So we're going to dive into sacred portals to your awakening. Please, 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 if you haven't, then get also the access to the free activation, The Ultimate Life of Having It All. And check out from marcilock.com if there's any other shows that will support you, any other coachings or meditations or activations or anything that will support you. We're all here to really activate ourselves and awaken ourselves to the highest frequency of operating from a divine place that we get to live in bliss and joy and awesomeness. Our highest recommendation is the tribe because you get access to everything. It's super dope and awesome. And definitely just enjoy the show and sending you so much love and appreciation. So glad that you're here and you're being able to take in this divine information to your awakening. I'm sitting here overlooking the Red Sea, one of the most dope, coolest places in Egypt, with one of the most glorious divine light beings that I'm super giddy to be with, which I'll kind of get into and share with you. The cosmic Egyptian god, one of my nicknames for you that I'm sitting with and get to share this space with. I am extremely excited about this show because I feel like there isn't many people who can bring awareness to it. There is not many people who understand it and the power of it. And so we're diving into something that is sacred portals to awakening. And the awakening of our souls, the awakening of our consciousness, the awakening of our DNA, all of our gifts, our capabilities. Holy fuck, we know like there's so much that happens here. And so the fact that I'm with someone who, like literally you guys, from the first moment I met this man, I just was like goo goo gaga because I was so geeking out on his light and his consciousness. And I just felt like I was in cloud 10. I even messaged my assistant. I'm like, I'm so in love with Ahmed. I love geeking out with this person because there's not many people who can always match me. And a lot of the things I've studied and experienced, and especially in this arena, is something that I've dove into for years. So what I'm talking about, guys, and I'll give you guys a little bit of context before I bring forth and introduce this amazing being that's sitting next to me. But I'm talking about sacred portal work. And this is something that years ago I was introduced to. I got invited to go to some sacred spaces and really do some deep work. And it was the first time I became aware of DNA activation, like awakening all the dormant DNA within us. Like we hear, oh, you've got 5% DNA and 95% junk DNA, which is bullshit. It's really just it's been dormant from the way that we're operating. And so learning to activate and awaken DNA to cleanse and clear our cells. And I had no idea what was actually available in these portals and why people would go to these sacred spaces other than, oh, that's cool, like, certain wonders of the world, etc. And it opened my world. And so for years, once I, obviously started working with plant medicines and sacred portal activation and kind of recalibrating the system, it was so big for me. I couldn't do anything but know that I had to share it. And it became like a big main part of my business, which is my whole company, Ascension Adventures. And so for me, for years, I have gone all over the world seeking out different portals and doing sacred work in these sacred spaces to get these codes of remembrance. And some people might be like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, a lot of people are like, what do you mean codes? And so this is why I'm so excited to have this conversation with someone who specializes in this. You've been doing this for like 11, 12 years, just deep sacred portal work, right?
And lifetimes, really.
Yeah, really. Yes. you're a mastery in it. And so that's why obviously you're called in this space. So I was really blessed that here I'm in Egypt. Egypt has been something I've studied for years, the gods, goddesses, deities, a lot of the understanding, the Kabbalion, and it popped into my field as time to come. And I was so blessed to get to be reunited with my soul brother here, and just someone who was meant to guide me through this in such a deep way, to have the kind of experiences that I had. It's not some little like, let's walk in the place, this is cool. Like, it's such a different world of seeing other tourists and people going through things. And so we'll kind of
doing divine initiations.
Yeah, and we'll share more of how we get, secret access to all these things. But so really, I want to bring awareness around what these spaces are, what they contain, what they do. And so Ahmed I'll let him kind of introduce himself and share a little bit, but really just one of the most dope, dope, I super ass cool, like so divine. Like I geek out so much in just being in your presence, your essence. You are such a mastery. And so all your work really shows, because you're such a beautiful example of the divine feminine, masculine, and complete balance. You're such a powerful person. I literally felt like I was just walking behind and protected by this Egyptian god. And yet every experience with people, you're so gentle and soft, and literally we got access to everything, because you just have this mastery of self. And so I see so many beautiful reflections in you that are of someone who is so aligned to our highest divine remembrance and self. And so I'm just so grateful for this time with you. And I'm so happy, so happy that you are here to do this with me. So
me too. It's so nice to be reunited again. I feel such a soul resonance with you, and just this recognition of the sacred work we're doing on our mission and our purpose, and how we both resonate so deeply on it. And here we are. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah. So I'll let you kind of share maybe how you got into this work and what you're really doing.
I'll introduce myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Ahmed El Feqy. I'm Egyptian. I own and manage Stargate Tours, leading sacred journeys to the temples of Egypt and Peru and many sacred sites around the world. I've been doing this for 11 years now, and professionally. Before that, I was doing it more as a hobby, like growing up in Egypt. I was got to go to the temples and meditate. I felt really strong connection to the Egyptian archetypes. I could see them in the skies, and there was a communication. And then I realized this was really special. It was a unique thing. It wasn't just not happening to everyone.
Yeah. Everyone else isn't getting the same experience as me.
So I started going to the temples and meditating, and really receiving some powerful transmissions from the energy, realizing the temples are actually alive, and they're transmitting all these knowledge and wisdom and frequencies. And I was integrating it all within my being, within my psyche and body. And it kept on growing on me, and I was like a solo mystic, going full throttle with it. And it really built up a lot of energy. And then my friends started getting interested, and they started coming with me. And then they bring their friends, and then we started doing regular journeys to these sacred sites and traveling a little bit around Egypt, and forming these groups where we gather around the pyramid and do sacred geometric formations at certain locations, special locations, and start doing these channelings, and really interesting people start showing up and bringing some really profound wisdom and mysteries revealed. So I saw okay, it's time to reach out and meet more people to learn from. And I started meeting elders, wisdom keepers by the Giza plateau. And I received a lot of codes from the oral tradition. It goes into the time of the matriarchy, the pre-dynastic, prehistoric, before written history, before the distortions of writing. Yes, when everyone started writing their own view. Before that, it was the knowledge was transmitted telepathically and from a whole generation to the next. So there was no room to distort it. Yeah. Because everyone had to be initiated into it in order to transmit it. And there's a whole protocol. And it involved using the students or the receivers inner faculties they needed to activate to really understand the wisdom behind it. So it was a high process of transferring wisdom, which was being practiced at the ancient mystery schools, Gnostic mystery schools, for the purpose of direct experience of the divine within us, which was later translated.
Direct experience is so vital here.
It's about, and that's why we do our journeys.
Yes.
this was later on translated in the mystical parts of different religions that we know on, like Sufism and Buddhism and all kinds of isms. But it's all about the same thing, which is the direct experience of the divine within us.
Yes.
Right? Within and without, of course.
And that's, just say that one more time. I mean, you're just about to drink it.
I just did.
The direct experience of the divine.
Yes.
And that is really what, so when people are studying books, it's just like me studying the Kabbalion and all these different things. There's such a massive, there's still a big disconnect, which I'm so excited to share about, even like what I experienced here, that there's like direct interaction in receiving these codes. But I just really feel like that's powerful for people to hear, that what you're getting is a direct experience of the divine within.
Of course, that's what we're about here, and that's why we do these journeys. So the temples are repositories of ancient wisdom and divine frequencies, and really gates of heaven and earth. They mirror the star constellations on the ground. So there's it's an ancient art of masonry and building sacred architecture that would really channel the universal energies, the universal creative frequencies, and the cosmic archetypes that we understand now as gods and goddesses.
Yeah.
And for the student or the initiate to integrate that energy within their being, anchor it, and know it for the frequency that it is, its purpose, its function, and actually start to utilize it.
Yeah.
And in that sense, we become more godlike, more like stars. Right?
Yeah. I'd love to just touch on that so people get more of an idea of what you're meaning there. And you can give some examples of this too. So for instance, I have worked with and studied Isis for quite a while, and Isis and Osiris. And Hathor was in my field as one of the, Sophia Dragon tribe that I would work with, but I knew very little or understood very little of Hathor, that it was more like, there wasn't a deep working with Hathor. But Isis I worked with a lot, and yet we went to, one of the many places we got to go to was the Isis temple. And I had such a deep experience of just feeling the actual frequency of Isis, the luxury codes, the royalty codes, the actual, like that, just the divine essence that she brings. I was just so encaptured with all of it in my body. As you know, I was like, I just wanted to curl over in a ball and stay there forever and just be held in this divine feeling of Isis. And as we were leaving, I was just in just pure appreciation, just crying my eyes out as we're on the Nile River and watching the sunset. And so then even my experience in the Hathor temple, I mean, you obviously, if you want to share what Hathor represents, nourishment, right?
Divine nourisher.
Yeah, divine nourisher.
I'll share what they all represent.
Perfect. And so anyways, having this experience in the Hathor temple felt like all these goddess codes dropped into me. Like really like the singing, the dancing, the being so nourished, like I'm starting to sway my body. I'm moving as a goddess now. It was like I got embodied with the codes and the essence of Hathor. And now I feel like I have, not only am I recalibrated, my whole system has a greater way of operating in that. And yet I have also access to work with this new frequency, work with this understanding at such a greater degree because I experienced it in my soul and in my system.
Yes. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so to understand what these frequencies are, it's important to understand the correct names and the historical reference of what they represent in the Egyptian psyche or mythology and their role in nature. Basically, all these gods and goddesses, they're known as Neter or Neteru in plural, or Netert in the feminine, right? So the root of the word Neter is the same as nature. They're elements of nature. Yeah. And as they're elements of nature and we're part of nature, they're part of who we are, right? They're not separate from us.
Yes.
We translate it as gods and goddesses, but there's always the Egyptians were, I would say, monotheist. So they believed in one creator, one source energy, and they didn't have a name for it. It was nameless because it was beyond definition. So how do they define it, or how do they identify with it? Through its attributes. So those gods and goddesses are the divine attributes, really. They're divine principles. They're like creative powers. And they were also beings. They were embodied, and they were powerful giants. And they started civilization. And we'll get into that later. But for now, understanding their names, let's say, because there's Osiris, his original name is Osir or Osar, right? And we see the Os is creation, the A is the masculine, is the creative thrusting power, right? And he's a principle of regeneration. Being the Lord of the underworld, we go into the underworld to regenerate. We go into the darkness to rebuild new bodies, or like to regenerate our awareness, right? Or become immortal. There's so many layers around it, but basically it's a principle of regeneration, and his color is like the turquoise, blue, green. That's the color of regeneration in nature. And then Isis, her name is Oset, right? Oset or Osut, right? So you have Os, the creative principle, and Et or Ut, the feminine, the O, right? That's the feminine, the womb, yeah? So she is that divine feminine creative principle. Therefore, she's the goddess, and she is all aspects of divine feminine is in her. That's what she represents. So she's a medicine woman, a healer, a priestess, high priestess, a lover, a mother, a virgin, and a nourisher, and medicine woman. Yeah. And then the trinity of it, like Hor, originally the name Horus is Hor, right? And Hor, you feel it in your breath. Actually, is the sky god, right? And he's the divine masculine, the divine child, the Christ energy. And
of Osir and Oset.
Right, the resolution of both, or the synergy of both energies. And that's the new leader of this time, Hor. He's like one of the most powerful and renowned ancient gods, because this is the time of his reign right now. Before it was Osir. And if we get into that now, it would be like, there's so many layers in the mythology, and I'm sure you've heard some of it, right? But a deeper layer of like how the ancient world, like how did these temples start? Let's get into that right away. Yeah. I feel like in the Egyptian mythology, we say like Aten, the sun, came out of the void, the primordial void. Nun is known as Nun. So
we're talking Ra here, Aten and
well, Aten is an aspect, or Ra is an aspect of Aten, or Aten is an aspect of Ra. It's all solar consciousness at different stages. Aten is the wisest, and therefore was known as the All. And it really emerged from the primordial water, and it took the form of a bird, and it needed to land somewhere. It created the first primordial mound, and it created the elements, the water and air, Tefnut and Shu, and Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky goddess. And out of their union was born Osir, Osar, and Nephthys and Set, which are the first primordial principles or beings. So the concept of the primordial mound, right, is like the first piece of land to emerge from the water, and it was a sacred land. And the ancients, the first people, they saw, okay, it's like a grid. Creation is a grid. It's based on universal physics. And there's central points, kind of like the energy centers in our bodies, the energy centers on the planet. So they could see, because they were seers, they could see these energy centers, and they built the first foundations of the first temples. And that's how it all started. And it's known as the primordial mound, like the first pyramid. And what we see now are layers built on top of the first foundation, first layer, because these places became very sacred. They are what you can call the axis mundi, the vertical axis of the world. It connects heaven to the earth. And it's a place, it's like a portal. So it brings these energies, these frequencies on the earth as above, so below.
And these are why we obviously were talking, like you go to Peru as well, and I've spent a lot of time in Peru. It's like there's these sites. So when we were talking in general, I mean, I know you're giving a lot of context to Egypt, but when we're talking in general about sacred portals and sites, like, I've gone to Damanhur, and there's like 4 energy grid lines. So it's like sacred energy grid lines. There's ley lines is another way you could describe it, but it's these cosmic grids around the planet that connect to each other and connect to the stars and specific, maybe you could say, the sacred geometry framework, or like that connect to the cosmos. So it's like a map that's matching as above, so below. Exactly. And that's why these sites hold not only intense sacred energy, but that's also then why the temples or some other things have been built there that also then carry these essences of nature and these codes that then bring us into a full wholeness or remembrance with all things.
Yes, because they're gateways of heaven and earth. They're gateways to access divine consciousness. And that's why they became pilgrimage sites and sacred sites, because the people recognized the importance of working with this energy and really to replenish and to connect with our multidimensional aspects and our divinity. So they became like places of learning, places of worship, places of pilgrimage, and living centers of civilization. They're like the foundation of true civilization. Around them were built cities of light. And we go to the first, they were the holy mountains, because the holy mountain represents the consciousness of God on the earth, in the material, like consciousness coming into matter. The mountains, they have this like divine masculine energy, right? The kind of like phallic energy, the pyramid, the fire, that shape, right? And so it's like they are the points of connection with the higher realms of consciousness. And people started building pyramids according to that symbolism of the mountain. And there's so many layers behind it, because the pyramid also, like the mountain, brings the underground water close to the surface. And that water was later used through a process called implosion, by splitting the hydrogen, the oxygen atoms from the molecule and collecting that gas and forming a flame that burns without combustion. That was then
all the Jedi mystery stuff,
right?
That defies all the human things that we've been taught of how things actually happen.
Yeah. So basically, we were able to see what's happening in nature and replicate it with a sacred architecture to bring these divine frequencies and build these stone altars on the foundations, on these portals that will connect us to the heavenly realms, to the divine consciousness and the celestial beings. And through that interaction became a very important ceremonial, mystical religion that would bring us back to all aspects of who we are and assimilate that into our civilizations. So that's why it's so important to visit these places and continue working with them, because they are divine gates to invisible realms. And if we work with them, we can really bring these energies to rebuild civilization in a harmonic way.
Yeah. I would love to bring, because I really love to bring this into simplicity and context for people to know how that actually comes into their world. This is obviously part of my genius, is bringing things down to really clear simplicity. I can just sit here and listen to you all day and like mouth dropped open, goo goo gaga, totally just like, I'm sure everyone is like, the voice, the essence that you are, all comes through, the wisdom that you have. How would you say, because you've done groups for 11 years, I've seen a lot of things in taking people through sacred portal work. How would you say this, what you've seen and how this affects someone in their everyday life, and what actually
it's life-changing. To really step out of our comfort zone and go on a spiritual pilgrimage involves facing our limitations, our blockages, and what is holding us back, and the illusions, the fear of separation. And that's a regular process when we go on that pilgrimage. And what we do, we hold space for people to go in their process in a safe manner, and they feel held and loved to really open. And when you open, you start reconnecting with aspects of yourself that you may have shut down or dissociated from because of trauma or whatever. And when you're held in that space and really working with people who can transmit certain energies that really open you up to the divine within you. And the temple is a reflection of that. It's a container of that. So you're held on so many layers, and that opens you up to aspects of yourself that are so powerful, that begin to nourish you, that begin to teach you, that begin to integrate into your body and showing you new ways, repattern the structure of your psyche. So you start upgrading. You start activating your genetic memory because of the contact with these energies.
It's a beautiful way to put it, is activating your genetic memory. Because these genes are within us. We've just, again, closed them off and shut them down.
A lot of times we've experienced these places before, or an aspect of our DNA carries the same knowledge, the same essence from which these places were created in the first place. So coming into contact with them activates this memory within us. And opens a whole other field of consciousness and awareness and vision.
And that's a whole other road we can go down with past parallel lifetimes, the work we've done. And for me, I found as I've gone to different places around the world, I have then, you've even said, I carry a white Pocahontas vibe, because I'm activated my indigenous remembrance from working with plant medicines in the jungles and all those things. And there's, in the Apus in Peru, and each space
brought forth like an awareness of wisdom that I had, gifts that I had, capabilities that I had that came through, and these divine ancient codes that were so sacred and they got to be brought forth and
upgrades your life.
Yeah. And, to bring some more understanding around what you're saying, where it's like what really happens is, from even myself as well as the people that we've been here with, it's like our human shit wants to come up because we go receive these codes and all this stuff. And so what happens is, you were talking about, is the void, and we could go off, I'm sure, on like darkness and the energy of that.
Creation physics.
Yeah. And versus a lot of people have a massive disconnect or misunderstanding. And a lot of this is just to bring awareness around that. The true understanding is they have a disconnect around darkness or what they see as dark energy, when we know it's like infinite possibility. It's the womb consciousness, the creation. Yeah, which is what most of the universe is made of. Right. And in that is I like to say, the destroy to create. It's like you talking about Osir, right? Is the
principle of regeneration
and reincarnation, and that there's those layers, right? And so there's, in that place, it's almost like we have to destroy what was there to allow the creation what's next. And so what I've experienced myself here, yesterday I totally had a day. You got to do a healing with Ahmed, and I was feeling all the feels. I was like, oh, this stuff. So it's almost like if there's been, say, dirt that's sunk down to the bottom of a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And then, they turn on the vacuum to the swimming pool to pull out the dirt. It shakes it up, and it's, it's almost like you shake up the cauldron. And so there's this cauldron inside you of like all this stuff stirring. And you go and you're like, oh, I'm seeing these sacred codes, and I'm in this, and you feel this amazing energy, a divine, very distinct energy. We were in certain places, and I just, I totally went multidimensional. It was just somewhere else, and I had Ahmed like holding space for me and doing these things, which meant I just felt so much. So then to come out of that, what it's really done is it's shook up my cauldron. It stirred up all the stuff that's like, oh, there's some deeper layers there of, for me, what I was experiencing yesterday was just radical self-acceptance, like deep wounded layers. You even said to me, old hurts, which really struck me. My soul was like, oh, that's what this is. These deep old hurts within my system that are being stirred up now so that I can fully feel them, and they can move now from my field as I now have felt these higher codes. They just can't coexist. Right. The higher codes and frequencies within my system are like, hey, this stuff gets to move so that this can totally land in your body and your field as a new way of being. So that's kind of the way that we experience it, in that these places bring forth whatever has been suppressed or hidden to allow it to kind of move from our field, and then really embody these new codes that we wouldn't have had an experience with unless we came into presence or experience with it.
Absolutely. And when you really integrate that new lesson, it becomes an initiation, because it thrusts you into a new level of initiation. Life, right?
I feel like my life has been an initiation one after another.
Right. And that's what we're here for. We're here to learn and develop and grow and expand into our divinity, right? Realize our full potential and be in service through that. Yeah. So you use the word cauldron, and that's exactly right, because it is a process of spiritual alchemy. It is a process of transmuting the lower aspects of self back into our divinity, into the pure gold of our essence, of our spirit. And the experience of the temples is a container for that, right? Because you have all the sacred energies and the ingredients from the sacred architecture and the sacred geometry and the numerology and the fusion of these divine energies into the actual space and the holographic language. And then the work that we do, which is holding space and transmitting these divine energies and opening these gates for the visitors to experience. For that people to really go deep into that field, because you can walk in, the way you approach the temple is the way the temple approaches you. Right? So when we go in with reverence and receptivity and humility and walk gently, we can really receive so much, right? It's like a student in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
If you open your senses and really stay empty to be filled, you get so much out of it.
To receive. And I want to bring a little bit of presence to that, because a lot of people, in my past experience where I've done this work around the world, I would always get people that would message me and be like, where did you go? Da, da, da. And they would want to go and just like go to the places, but they would have a completely different experience. Again, because we know the way that we go about these portals and the work that we do in the portals, the toning, the activation, the invoking, the channeling, all the things that open up the system are completely different than what a lot of people experience. But what I do believe is that anyone that goes can receive.
Of course.
I mean, they're receiving, they're in a sacred, grid of energy, they're in a sacred space. And the more awareness for people, whether if you chose to just go and not necessarily be led and guided and directed by someone like us that goes through these things, is to go with like, the openness of divine reverence. I approach every sacred temple, plant medicine work, etc., with like such reverence. And I get that from you. You have such this sacred feeling of like being led and guided into these things. But so people can go into those and they can still receive the codes, but being very aware of how much more they can become aware of what's actually available to receive more. Yet I know what we got access to with you having these connections and, having done this for years. And a lot of the places I went, it's like when I was in Dom and Her, we got access into the sacred temples to do deep meditation work and other things. And most people could barely even get signed up to walk through for a tour. So it's a very different experience. Everyone can go to the temples. What we had with you was getting access behind locked gates and, the hidden secret passageways and permits to get up inside the temple, and then doing the toning and the activation was just like, I just feel like so divinely blessed to have it at such another level and degree. But I want everyone to know that they can go into these places, yet to approach it very differently. We saw people having it was for us that were together as a group. It was so interesting as we'd be in certain spaces where we got obviously access with you to all the secret hidden spaces and time with ourselves in different chambers and to do all the work. And then the times when we were in places where there was regular tour guides and lots of people, oh my gosh, just feeling the energy difference of the way they talked about it. It was like such a disconnect. We could hear, we're like, whoa, the energy of how they're talking about it, the information they're giving, just quickly, here, look here, It was like, oh my God, I just kept continuing to find myself in such gratitude and appreciation that the universe had delivered you as our beautiful, sacred soul family contract back into my life at this time to have the experience that I had. And so just bringing awareness to people of if they go to these spaces to really become aware of how much more they can receive by how prepared they are to go into those spaces, who's actually taking them into those spaces. Right. The energy of those spaces is just such a sacred gift that a lot of people just see it as like, cool, I want to go see the pyramids, where it's so, and they're missing, or it's like they might feel some things, but they're missing all that's available because of the openness of what's really there to be received.
What you're talking about is the level of access, which is determined by how much inner work we've done. The more inner work we do, the more access we have to our divinity, to increasing sensitivity of the space around us and within us. Yeah. And through that, we gain a deeper understanding. And when we really work with that understanding, integrate and apply it, there's another level of mastery. Mm-hmm. And that integrated mastery can be when anchored in oneself, it can be transmitted through the guiding. Mm-hmm. So if you've mastered something and you're guiding people to it, there's a higher level of understanding within your body, within your being, that can really efficiently transmit that knowledge or wisdom to them. Mm-hmm. And that's our role as guides, as facilitators. The more inner work we do, the more access we have to these dimensions and energies, and we can hold the space for others to come deeper into that. Of course, the temple is a container, but also our body temples are the containers we always have with us. Yeah. And it's so important, the interaction, the alchemy between how we activate those sacred sites and how these sacred sites activate us back. It's a symbiotic relationship. And that's our role also as space holders, to activate the space for the visitor. Because on a regular tour, you'd be walking with a regular guide who would be sharing all kinds of disinformation.
So much disinformation.
With a frequency of disconnect that will dissociate you from the space completely, and it's all on a surface level and distorted history.
Yeah, it was a little hard to swallow. I was like, whoa.
Because it's not in resonance with the actual sacred space you're in. So this is the issue with humanity right now, is that how we're living certain lies as truth, and the truth have become hidden myth. right? But the myth or the mythology was actually our spiritual lineages encoded through timelessness to deliver these messages, deliver these codes, these archetypes into our psyche through storytelling, right? But there's so much beyond the storytelling, actual experience of these energies within oneself. Yeah. So we bridge the mythology. We are living myth. Temples are living libraries. And as we interact with them, we're able to open these spaces within ourselves and within these sacred locations and chant certain mantras that will open the gates of heaven and earth and really transmit these frequencies. And we work with star beings and divine archetypes and all kinds of spiritual guides. And
we can go as woo-woo as we want to go like here.
Pure source energy. Basically, what it is about opening our channels and the people's channels to really be clear and transmit these divine frequencies, these pure source consciousness. And from that, we evolve as human beings. Yeah. And that's why we visit these temples, to really open our containers to our full potential and be clear channels of the divine, of the pure source energy. And the process of the pilgrimage works through the layers that may inhibit this connection, to remove them, to transform them, to release the blockages and open the channels more fully so we can embody deeper and bigger aspects of ourselves. And from that, we go back into our communities and home, and we are of greater service. We are of greater mastery. We have a deeper understanding of the human, and therefore can operate this with more mastery.
And we operate from that consciousness. We actually transmit it to the field. And what I love is that, so even as we've all been here doing this deep work, we've had so many people message us saying, oh my gosh, whatever you guys are doing over there is activating us, and just sharing some of the things that we've shared is just, so it's like, that's what's so beautiful about it, is you do change the frequency of everything around you when you're also operating at a higher level of consciousness and you're holding that frequency. Like I experience a frequency every time I'm next to you and like with you. And this is also why I know we both are so passionate about experiential training. You know, I obviously have my programs online and, you know, do all sorts of other things to support people. Again, a lot of people, it's like preparing them for this kind of experience. A lot of people that have been in my programs for years or done stuff, then they're ready to come do plant medicine and sacred portal work and come on these journeys with me because they're actually open for it and so much more ready for it, and then filling in the gaps of the human consciousness. But I equate it to sacred portal work and these type of activations, plant medicines, etc. I equate it to like, you want to become a swimmer. And everyone's like, okay, I want to become a swimmer, but I'm afraid of the water. You know, I might have some fears and programs or things of like drowning, etc. And so they can study books about it, and they can talk to a coach about it, and they can analyze and process through all their fears. But you're never going to be a fucking swimmer, my friends, until you jump in the water. And when you're in the water, you have an experience. And that's to me really why I've continued to go all over the world for myself. Like I believe leaders go first. You get to be the essence frequency. And that's why I have so much respect for you and so much love for you. And from the moment I met you, I was like, oh my God, I love him, because I can tell from your essence and your frequency. And as I mentioned, the mastery of what you give out is what you are inside. Just that I could see your journey. I could understand that you've been through quite the journey. And then as you filled in the gaps of your journey, I was like, holy fuck, Jedi wizard, being of light, I absolutely love. And most people can tell just listening to you, you are so knowledgeable and have such wisdom, yet you're so passionate about continuing to share these spaces, because we know it's so much more than, I believe these are so much more than what I could ever deliver as a human being.
Thank you so much.
And multidimensional alien that I am. When I take people to these places, it's almost like it doesn't depend on me at all. Same thing with working with plants. It's like it knows exactly what your soul requires. Right. And brings forth from within you exactly what your soul requires for your greatest healing. And that's always available, and it has nothing to do with some human brain that's like, I'm going to...
Well, it bypasses all that, because what we're working on the level of the higher self, to really bridge the higher self deeper into our bodies.
Yeah.
And the higher self is already the part of you that is whole, that is complete, that is perfect, and in divine alignment with the divine plan, and just knows. So the journey is to create that bridge, to really bring the higher self. And that's the work we do. That's why we open these portals and hold this space and go on the pilgrimage, to access our higher selves more and cultivate this the most intimate relationship you're ever going to have to your higher self. That is the gate to the divine union, to the balance of the inner masculine and feminine.
We're talking about yesterday, the inner romance with ourselves, the luscious love affair within.
It's the divine romance. That's the level of intimacy, of connection with the truth that is within us. And it's so juicy and just like so ecstatic. Juicy. It's ecstatic, really, when we have that connection.
I don't know how many times we were in temples and I was like, I am having an inner orgasm. This is just amazing.
Because it's so nourishing having experienced this divine energy in the sacred space around us, and like in sacred moments like this. It just really expands our vessels to the possibilities that are awaiting us, the fullness of life, the fullness of joy and fulfillment in being.
Fuck yes.
Right?
Fuck yes.
And that's why we do this work, you know, because there are certain moments on the pilgrimage where like you're like, I came here exactly for this. Because you receive it. There's certain places going to resonate with you, a gate that's going to open, a transmission is going to happen, and wisdom received that's going to be a full fuck yes in your body, that's going to expand you to new levels.
And that one experience will massively shift your world. And so when we get to just do, I mean, we've done 12 days all over Egypt in the most amazing divine spaces. I just have so much more. I feel like I'm a completely different person than 12 days ago, which always happens as we continue to, this is why this work is so vital and so important. So for people to hear what's available, and it's all there, yet it's just a matter of giving themselves permission to access those things and to go within. And really what you're also talking about is like the lower vibrational energies that we're operating from in 3D, right? And as we transmute those to the lower energies to higher energies, it's like, you know, studying Hor and Osiris, and the way that we do this is coming to fifth dimensional consciousness, which is we lose individuation.
Right. We really integrate these divine frequencies into our being that takes us to whole other level of understanding, a whole other ball game of life. And on that level, the frequencies of fear and separation cannot exist, because it's a place of wholeness. It's a place of no separation, beyond light and dark, beyond good and evil, where it's all divine. And to get to that place, we really have to face our fears, which are illusions, and heal the illusion of separation. And how we do that is with love. Because love and compassion, acceptance is the medicine, is the cure.
Yes, it
we
is.
really love ourselves, accept ourselves, and just be honest with who we are and where we are in that moment. We open the gates to be okay with where we're at and be real about it. It's about being real, you know? Part of life is suffering, that's fine. We go through the challenges to learn from. But if we resist what we're feeling and distort it, then we're not going to get the medicine, what's behind it. Every shadow behind it is a great gift. So we have to go through these gates.
You know that I could go off on that with the emotional thing. We could go off on so many different shows and different aspects. And I really appreciate all of your knowledge and all of your wisdom and you embodying heart-centered consciousness and Christ consciousness as we also go into like, again, like what our brain thinks, to bringing it into, like you just spoke about, feeling like the fullness of all things and receiving all things and coming into that wholeness and that allness. And for everyday person, I want them to understand that this is why I know I was at a space years ago where it's like, you know, I didn't really care about something if it didn't affect me. I didn't see how it affected me, right? Like stuff happening all over the planet. And now I'm in a place where like I have such a deep passion. We do so many philanthropy projects around cleaning up Gaia and supporting Gaia. She is our partner in this evolution. She is a living being with ancient wisdom. And I just have so much depth of feeling and love for Gaia as every day I'm giving gratitude for every single step of her supporting me and the plants and the animals. My connection to all beings, all things, all experiences is completely different. And back then, I might have not understood why that was important. And what we're bringing voice to here is why, like people like, why would I need to go connect to this essence of this god or goddess or this nature or this space or this thing is the more that we come into coherence with every single aspect of our planet and our being as we are all one, that is then, as you said, the ending separation, which keeps us small and lacks scarcity, fear, rejection. All those things are operating from, I'm an individual that's separate and I have to prove myself. I have to get this thing and all those things, even the energy of that as we talk about that. So I really want people to hear that all of this is for the more that you come into experience and understanding. Even understanding leads to forgiveness, right? The more we come into understanding of every aspect of what's available here, and we own each part of ourselves, because we know that anything that we're rejecting is just a reflection of a trait within that we haven't learned to love. So when we can become at that place where you're talking about, where it's like everything is divine, everyone is beautiful, everything is perfect, whole, and complete in all of their spaces and forms, the more we actually have the ability to operate from bliss, peace, flow, unconditional love. And that doesn't mean we don't have, like I did yesterday, a total like, I'm feeling all my shit day, right?
Yeah, because it's all authentic.
Yeah.
We are not dissociating from anything.
Yeah.
We are integrating it all, accepting it all, and working with it.
Yeah, integrating it all and accepting it all. And that's really just what I want people to hear, is that brings us to our wholeness, our peace, our ability to receive and create as an effortless manifester all that we want, because anything that we're resisting is a block in manifestation.
Right.
Shame energy, blocking things. So just to bring that more into human context of like, why would I want to, why do I connect with all these things? Why do I care? Because it gives you your fucking freedom, my friends.
Because
it gives you your liberation.
It's restoring our sacred relationship with ourselves,
yes,
and with our community, and with the earth,
yeah,
and with God.
When you just said that, I realized that's also like a way of saying it's accessing a whole part of you. Like, it's like if you didn't know, your background, or you didn't know parts of yourself or gifts that you even have, that's pretty much what people are walking around with. They're walking around operating from, I was programmed with this is what I was told, and this is what I know. And there's a whole massive world inside them of gifts, capabilities, just like awareness of where they came from, all these things that they've just not known. And when you access that, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm a cosmic being of light that has this ability and this ability. And you start fucking creating like whatever you want because you have awarenesses now. That's what you're really speaking to.
It's a whole other level, because the ancients, the divine awareness they had that created these places, they were working with creation physics, quantum physics, and universal physics. So these powers create life, create civilizations. And when we access these powers within us, it's a whole other level of creation.
You become a Jedi, a wizard, an alien,
More
all the
that,
things.
Even more.
All the things,
right?
Yeah.
We become godlike because we're working with divine creative energies.
Yeah.
And it's so important, like just the point of restoring that sacred relationship, first with ourselves, with our higher selves, with the divinity, and with the earth, and with our community. That's going to lead us to building new civilizations. That's what this is about.
The new earth frequencies we talk about.
And the new cities of light. The
golden
new temples,
cities,
the new foundations.
Yes.
They're based on harmonics, based on universal physics, on the grid of creation, and the divine cosmic energies, the creative principles, the archetypes. Fully integrated in the human, in the physics, in the structure.
Yeah. So we're really receiving the codes to our inner map, as well as the map of the greater earth that we can experience.
Yes.
It's the whole reason we do what we do.
So it's a big deal.
Is to come together and rise in these new earth frequencies. I'm so fuck yes. I love you. I want to just talk to you and talk to you and talk to you and talk to you. You guys can tell I'm just so glad that I got to share my dear divine friend with me.
Thank you.
And actually, we are looking at getting to come together and bring peeps to both Peru and another experience in Egypt. Might be a combination of some plants, might be a combination of some sacred sites. But I was so honored and so in awe of you and your abilities and what you bring forth. And so I just I get to bring a load of my peeps and leaders here to receive the same depth of new wisdom that then they can take forth into the world and really, bring this together. So I'm so grateful for that, and I'm excited about that and looking forward to that as well.
It's going to be fun, yeah. And just to share my information, if people want to reach out to me, and my website is stargate-tours.com and -sungate.com. And on Facebook, URL is /the Sungate.
Yeah, and they can always message us too, and we can guide and direct them to all, because you have, the different spaces that you're going to as well. So, yeah, I love you so much, my friend. I'm so grateful for you. Wow, so grateful for you. Thank you for bringing this wisdom and context and understanding for more people to realize the value of what we have available in these spaces.
It's my pleasure and my passion, and I'm really happy to share it.
Yeah, awesome. I love you.
I love you.
Love you all. Enjoy.
Thank you, my friends, for joining me for another amazing conversation to create change. To allow that change to take place, please integrate the tools so that you can really receive the change into your life. And I invite you to join us for even more in the Best Life Tribe and continue on your path and your journey. And remember who you really are, a divine being that is already whole, already worthy, completely deserving, and fully capable to now claim and live the life you love.